Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Banner. Welcome to another installment of Always Test a New Lens. So, Beth and I are planning a trip in a couple months to Olympic National Park, and I've been doing some thinking about the equipment that I want to take for this trip. Um, and as people who have watched this channel know, I have a Lumix 12-60, the kit lens that came with my G95, but I also have a 12 to 35 millimeter f2.8, which I had been using for event work. I When I first bought my G9, which I bought used, I bought a copy of the Leica 12 to 60, which is f2.8 to f4, so it's about a stop faster than the kit Lumix 12 to 60. And but even at that, I felt it wasn't quite fast enough for doing event work. So I ended up selling that lens and getting the 12 to 35, which I've used for events. And of course, when pandemic came along, and after pandemic, I haven't really been shooting that many events. So I thought for this trip that maybe going back to the Leica 12 to 60 might be a great idea because very frequently I would take the 12 to 35 off my G9 and pop the Lumix 12 to 60 on it, just for the greater range. I thought, I could always sell the 12 to 35 if I buy the 12 to 60, which would partially make up the cost and maybe sell another lens or so. Um, we've all done this, right? And I went ahead and ordered a Leica 12 to 60 f2.8-4. And so it arrived last week, and I've been shooting with it. In fact, last week I did a little photo expedition. I drove about an hour and a half north of here to a place called Illinois Beach State Park, which is um, kind of a preserve of what the Lake Michigan shoreline was before we built it all up. It's called a dune and swale topography. So there are ridges of dunes, not real high dunes, but ridges of dunes along the lakeshore with a beach on the lake side of the dunes. And it's interesting. It's an interesting place. There are plants that grow there that are very rare and can't be found in a lot of places in the Midwest. And also there's prickly pear cactus, because the dunes, even though they get the same amount of rainfall that we get in this area, the water soaks right through, and it's actually kind of a semi-arid environment. So yeah, I got some nice images, but in doing that trip and also using the lens right around here locally, I started to notice that at 12 millimeters at f2.8, one of the lower corners, the left-hand corner, was soft, and not just a little bit soft, but soft. And so I investigated further, just to see, what was going on. So I'm going to put up some images and go through what I did to test this. Since it was a lower corner that was affected by the softness, I went to an open field in a local forest reserve and put the focusing point about a third of the way into the frame, so that everything in front of that should be in focus. And here is a crop of the lower right corner, and you can see it looks pretty sharp. However, when we move over to the lower left corner, this is pretty soft. And there's another way that you can visualize this. And some viewers may already know how to do this. If you open the image in Photoshop and go to the filters menu and go down to stylize and choose find edges, you'll get this. What happens is the edges that it finds are made dark. So where you have a sharp image and plenty of edges, you see it's dark. So this is quite dark in the middle and pretty dark in the lower right corner, but the left corner and actually up the left side of the frame, things are not so great. Stopping down to f4, it's a bit better, but that corner is still softer than the right corner in the center of the frame. You can also notice a little bit of field curvature in the focus up at the top of the image. You can see how the sharp area curves in. So that's field curvature, which is to be expected in a zoom lens. So the question arises, what happens with the plain Jane Lumix 12 to 60? So this is the Lumix 12 to 60 at 12 millimeters and wide open at f3.5. And here is the lower right corner of the Lumix 12 to 60. You can see it softens up a bit at the very, very corner, but it's not actually too bad. And here is the lower left corner of the Lumix 12 to 60 wide open at f3.5, and this actually is pretty sharp. I mean, it looks sharp almost all the way to the corner. And if we run find edges on the image, what we see is you can see that lower right corner is a bit soft compared to the rest of the image, but it's not that bad. And if we stop the Lumix down to f5, which is one step down from f3.5, it evens out pretty well. It still looks a little bit softer in that lower right, but really probably not noticeable in an actual image. And a couple things to be cautious about. One is, as far as comparing absolute sharpness between these two lenses, I'd be a little careful, because if you look at the main images, the image with the Leica was shot the day before the image with the Lumix lens, and it was an overcast day, so not a lot of contrast, whereas the Lumix I shot the following day, and it was a sunny day, so of course it's going to be contrastier and edges are going to show up more. Also, just to point out the Lumix, what you look in the background, what looks like barrel distortion, no, there's actually a real hill there that drops off to the left. So as you can see, this copy of the Leica 12 to 60 has something going on with it. There's probably a misaligned element in here, whether it's decentered or tilted. I'm not sure, but really, given the price that you have to pay to get one of these, that to me is really not acceptable. So this one's going back. In fact, I've done further thinking about it, and I don't think I'm going to get a replacement. I will just work with the equipment that I have. I haven't decided whether I'm taking the Lumix 12 to 60 or the Lumix 12 to 35 f2.8 with me on this trip. But yeah, and actually, I kind of did some investigating online. It seems that with the Leica 12 to 60, it's not an unfrequent occurrence to find that you've got some either decentering or tilted element issue. There's one commenter on one forum who said that they had tried 4 different copies of this lens from 4 different retailers, and none of them were without this issue. So really, this is a quality control problem. Well, it's a manufacturing problem and a quality control problem. And so whatever it is, I think Panasonic really ought to address it. So if you're going to spend this kind of money on a lens, it should not have these issues. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And especially when a lens half the price with the same range, albeit not as wide an aperture, um, has fewer of these issues. Now, also, one more thing to think about is this is a more complex lens than the Lumix. The Leica has more elements, um, so there's more in here that can go wrong, but I don't think that's an excuse. I mean, you should have your manufacturing tolerances better for this than you do for this. And so, so it's going back. The, the polarized circular polarizer I bought to use with it's going back too, because this is a 62 millimeter filter thread, and none of the other lenses I have that filter thread. Hope this was helpful and useful to you. If so, please hit that like button. Um, if you have any questions, mosquitoes are out. There's no mosquitoes all year here, and I think it's maybe we had some fair amount of rain the last few weeks, and they're out, and I'm not wearing mosquito repellent. But anyway, yeah, if any comments or questions, leave them down below. Any experiences that you've had with the Leica 12 to 60, and really, when you get a good image from this lens, I mean, it's a really good image, but these issues are just make it unacceptable for me to keep it. So again, thank you for watching. I'm Todd Banner. I will see you next time.